Today is day 3 of our trip to Scandinavia. If you missed the first few days, we did put up some shorts. We started today walking around our neighborhood. Where we were staying, there was a lot of really beautiful, ornate architecture. Where we live in California, the oldest buildings were built maybe like in the late 1800s, so we really don't have anything like this at home. We wanted to try a coffee shop near us first thing. We found a place about half a mile away from us. It was really cute. I think it was called Osterhausgartens or something like that. Gage got a cappuccino and I got an espresso. Gage also got this veggie burrito. We talked to the owner of the place. He was really nice and he actually told us he makes his hummus in-house. A lot of the restaurants we went to, we found that the owners and the cooks make most of their ingredients in-house instead of like buying the ingredients and just putting them together. So much of the food was made from scratch and quite frankly, it tasted like it. Super fresh, very flavorful. This is some of the great art they had inside the shop. When we were done with our coffees and eating, we walked toward the famous Wagner Park. Along the way, we passed a lot of shops. All of the window displays were really cool. One thing I observed about the fashion in Oslo was that a lot of people dressed similarly, but it was in a very classy, put together way. I felt like everyone was either dressed semi-formally or dressed in exercise attire. We only had to walk a couple of blocks to get to the entrance of Wagner Park. This was one of my favorite views of our entire trip. The park has such well-kept gardens and just these beautiful statues throughout the entirety of it. I'm going to be making another video that's more in depth about all the things we saw here because one video just really couldn't do it justice. Also, I didn't take any footage of this, but there were 3 different preschools that were surrounding the park, which I love because all of the kids got to go through the park during the day and have walks throughout the park. I love that idea. Also, I thought it was funny that all of the kids were wearing these vests, crossing guard vests, so you wouldn't lose them. We saw these beautiful Norwegian birds. After we were done walking through the park, we started our trek to the Fram Museum. This one was a long one. We calculated it out and we probably walked about 7 miles this day. But I'm glad we did it because we got to walk through a lot of Norwegian neighborhoods and see a lot of houses and how people were living. We saw many different styled homes. This home had a huge apple tree in their front yard. There was probably hundreds of apples on this one tree. We were walking through this neighborhood and we came across this really cute book exchange. I love that idea for a neighborhood. We also noticed that there are tons of electric cars in Norway. We live in California and we have a fair amount of electric cars, but nothing like this. So many of the streets also had these electric fill stations. We also loved the detail that was put into these manhole covers. Each one we came across was different. Then we came across this car that I had to take a video of because I'd never seen anything like it. The closest thing I've seen is a smart car, but it was so small. It was way smaller than a smart car. The company that makes it is called Buddy, which I thought was pretty cute. Another thing we kept seeing were these advertisements for the play Sister Act. It was very well advertised. There were also normal bikes, electric bikes, and scooters everywhere we went. One thing we noticed about Oslo is that so many people exercise publicly here, and the city is built for it. There are walkways everywhere, there are bike paths everywhere. This was truly the most walkable city I've ever seen. We then came across these apartment buildings and I thought the architecture and design of it was just so beautiful. We also walked by these corporate offices and I thought it was interesting that none of the offices had curtains or window shades at all, which on one hand I think was pretty nice because the people working get a lot of sunlight, but also they have zero privacy. The entire city can see them. The next part of our path was pretty woodsy. This was something we had never seen before. It was a robot that cut grass, as a remote control car. I don't think anyone was controlling it though. I think it was just automated and sensing the ground. I would love for that invention to come to the US. I really like the design of this house. This gate was really cute. Then we came across this construction company advertisement and I thought it was pretty funny. I think this was the most expensive neighborhood we walked through. Some of these houses were so big and intricate. Finally, we reached the Fram Museum. It was right on the water, very beautiful. I have another video coming with a tour of the inside, but this was outside. It was right on the sea. You could see the cruise ships and a lot of different boats. We walked up to the shore and we saw these jellyfish hanging out, but I wasn't quite sure if they were alive or not. We saw this nice statue. Then we started our way back to the hotel. We came across this Norwegian graffiti. It was a different route back. We came across these cows grazing. Then we came across these grazing goats. They were right next to the harbor. In the harbor, we saw these swans, and I had actually never seen a swan in person before. They were absolutely beautiful. After that, we came across this pedestrian bridge right over the highway. I love this idea for big cities to increase their walkability because I feel like the highway creates this disconnect from pedestrians, but I thought this worked great. Next, we passed by this trolley car. Then we got closer to our neighborhood, and again, we saw those beautiful, intricate European buildings. We passed by this cute tea house. We met this very aloof Norwegian cat who really couldn't care less if we gave her pets or not. After that, we came to this American diner, which I thought was really funny because I'd never seen, being in the United States, an American-themed diner. I didn't realize they had them in other countries. But of course they had the burgers, the hot dogs sort of thing. Now I had packed my food for the day from the grocery store, but Gage was getting hungry, so we decided to go into this Mexican restaurant. Now being from San Diego, we're pretty picky about our Mexican food. We had tried some in other locations and they've been really disappointing. But Gage was surprised by how good it was. It wasn't quite what we were used to at home, but it was legitimately good. Then we finished the walk back. It started raining at the end, but it wasn't too bad. Then after a few hours of rest, we had tickets to go see a ballet at the Norwegian Opera House. We were pretty tired at this point, so we decided to take a bus. I have to say, the public transportation in Oslo was absolutely fantastic. No one really checked your ticket. It was all based on the honor system pretty much. The pickups are super frequent and also very short. You have to be so quick or you will miss the stop. But they also have these buttons that you can push if you have a baby and you have to get your stroller out, or if you're elderly and you need a little bit more time, you can press those buttons and the stop will extend a bit, which is really nice. When we got to the opera house, it was still raining a bit, but we saw this beautiful rainbow right outside. The inside of the opera house was absolutely gorgeous. We were going to see a ballet we had never heard of before. It's called Giselle, and I enjoyed it, but I have to say this plot line was pretty rough. The premise is that there's this prince and this maiden that fall in love. The maiden doesn't realize that he's already engaged to a rich gal, and so he can't marry her, and so she decides to commit suicide. That is all the first act. Now, I was wondering what the second act could be after that, and basically it was just ghost dancers. Everyone's just dancing in the afterlife. There's no plot in the second act. Overall, not a great story. Now, I accidentally left my camera at the seats, and I realized that when we had walked out to the bus stop, it had only been 5 minutes, and I was running back because almost everyone had already exited the building, which I was shocked by how efficient that was. But they had already sweeped the seats for any lost and found items, and they were able to give me back my camera, and I was so happy about that. Then we took the bus home, and we got some sleep.